Hi, my name is Katie, and today we are going over chapter 1 about Spring Framework. So let us begin. So here we have chapter 1 getting started with Spring. So the chapter will cover is the Spring and the Spring Boot Essentials, initializing a Spring project, and overview of Spring landscape. So here we have a question: what is Spring? Spring is a powerful Java framework that manages application components using dependency injection. It wires together object which is called beans in a container called the application context. Beyond that, it offers tools for web apps, data access, security, microservices, and more. Now, before moving on, you might be wondering what is a bean? So in Spring, a bean is simply an object that is managed by the Spring container. So if we take a look over here, we have the essence. So a bean, which is a component, it's the building block of the application, like a service or a repository. Next, it's managed by Spring. So Spring creates and configures and wires the beans together using dependency injection. And then also it's defined in code or config. So you can declare beans using annotations like here we have the add component, the add services, or the add bean. You might be also wondering what is a configuration. So in Spring, configuration refers to how you define and set up components, which are beans, and the relationship in the application. So here's a quick breakdown again. So here we have the configuration. Um, so it is setup instruction. So it tells Spring what beans create, what beans to create and how to wire them together. It can also be done via the Java classes using the add configuration and the add bean. Annotations like add component, add services, etc. So what is the purpose? Um, the purpose of configuration is to basically centralize and control how the app is built and behaves at runtime. So think of it as a blueprint Spring uses to assemble your app. Okay, now moving on. This is just how you build a Spring project. So here we have listing 1.1, the initial Marvin build specification. So this is the Marvel file. I will explain via IntelliJ. Just do it like this. Okay, so before I begin explaining what is in the file, you might be wondering what is Marvin. So Marvin, the POM.xml file, the file that is open here in IntelliJ, uh, it is the project object model. So this file is the build configuration file for Marvin, a tool that automates compiling, packaging, and managing dependencies in Java. So now I will be explaining what it is exactly. So the key roles of the pom.xml in Spring Boot app. So it declares dependencies. Let me find it. So what I'm going to highlight here is dependencies. They are all just dependencies. So the list this just lists the libraries your app needs, like Spring Web, Timeleaf, etc. So Marvin downloads them automatically. Next, we inherit from the parent POM. Let me find it. So here we have the parent. Um, so here it uses the Spring Boot starter parent to simplify versions management and ensure compatibility across Spring libraries. Next, we configure and build the plugin. So let me find that as well. So here we have our plugin. Um, so basically, it includes the Spring Boot Marvin plugin to package the app as an executable jar and run it with Marvin. And then we also use status for simplicity, which is also a dependency. So let me find it. So as you can see here, we have Spring Boot Starter. So this is just a bundle related to. Let me just highlight it for you. So here we have so here we have starters for Timely, for Spring Boot Web, and Spring Boot Starter. These over here. So the starter dependencies is the one related library, so you don't have to list them individually. And then lastly, we just set the project's metadata. So it just defines the project's name, um, the version description, and the Java version as well. Now that I've explained the Marvin page, I am going to move on. Next, we are moving to the Bootstrap class. So here we have what we call the Taco Cloud application. So the Taco Cloud application is the main entry point. So this is the class that boots up the Spring Boot app. We have a few annotations, and now I'll just go over what the purpose is. So here we have an annotation over here. The Spring application. So here we have the Spring Boot Spring application. So this is what makes the class config source, like a app configuration. And then also here we have the auto config application. So here it tells Spring that it must auto config beans based on the dependencies. And then also we have the component scan. That's just scanning for the app components, the services, and the app controller, etc. So together, they let Spring discover and configure and wire the app automatically. Moving on, we have the main method. So we have the public static void over here. Here we have the public static void. So here we have what we call the Spring application at run. Let me just highlight it. So the application context loads the beans and then it starts the embedded server. So this is the method that runs when you launch the Java. That is basically what is happening over here in this file. Next, I'll be moving on to what we have a test file. So you might be wondering, why do we have a test file? So imagine you're building a cool taco website with blocks like Lego bricks. Now, before you show it off to your friends, you want to make sure that all the pieces fit together and nothing falls apart. So this is what the test file is basically for. Why do we have a test file? So it checks if everything is working, like asking, can I build this without anything breaking? It also loads the app secretly, so even though the test looks empty, it quietly starts the application and watches for errors, and it will warn you early if something is broken, like a missing piece or putting it in a wrong spot. The test will say, uh-oh, and warn you. So, yeah, we have something called the at Spring Boot. So over here, it pretends we're starting the app, and then just make sure everything loads okay. And then it will just load everything and see if everything works. Next, we have the controller file. Here we have the home controller. Um, so what is the homepage controller? So imagine your website is a big house, and then someone comes to knock on the front door, and I guess it goes to this over here. So you need someone to answer that knock and say welcome. So this is what the controller does. So as you can see, we have the code over here. So take a look over here. We have add controller. So the add controller, this just helps to handle the website's request. And it also tells Spring that this class should handle the web request. Next, we have the get mapping over here. So if someone visits the home page, it will run this method. So it's just going to get the HTTP request for the root URL of this method. So when someone visits the locals 8080, this method will run. The get method will run. Um, so you might be wondering what is it going to get exactly? So it's going to get this file, the public string home, which I will go over after I've explained this. And then we also have the return home. So this just shows the page was called the home HTML. Now I'm going to the home HTML. It is in the resource folder by templates. So this folder is basically split into smaller parts. So we have the templates. This is where you put all the HTML pages, like your home page. Spring uses these to show stuff in the browser. So for example, home.html goes here. Next, we have the static file. So this is where you put images, CSS files, JavaScript, things like that. It basically doesn't change. So if you want to show a logo or a style to your page, Spring grabs it from here. Like over here we have a image. This image over here. So this is where Spring will grab the static file from to display it on the website. Um, So basically, this is a HTML file. So when someone visits the site, Spring looks in the resources folder to find what to show, like the treasure map leading to the HTML and the images. So basically, the controller will say, let me explain it over here. So here we have the get map. So I'm gonna explain it like this. So the controller will maybe say, show the home page. As you can see, we have the get method, public string home. So Spring goes and it says, okay, let me grab the home HTML. It's quite basic. I don't need to explain this. It grabs the home HTML from the templates folder over here. And then if home HTML says show a taco image, Spring will go and then it will go into the static file over here and get the image that it instructed it to get, and it will display it on the website. Where is it over here? So here we just have the title, our header, and then the image that it is instructing you to go and find. So now that I've explained the entire application and how Spring Boot works, so now we can start the application. So now we can see that the application is building. Here we have the localhost 8080, and there we have our static file displaying on the website. So that is it for chapter 1. Thank you for watching.